Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast. You can find them always at inforum.com or wherever you find your podcasts, Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the WDAY app. You can find us there as well. With Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. Looking forward to today's chat, as I always am. I've got about 19 things that I'm sure none of this will talk about because we'll go off on some sort of tangent.
So I yawn off mic about 30 seconds ago, and you accused me of not having the hard edge effect.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm ready to go.
When the
lights
are
on, baby.
You're ready to go? Where do you want to start this week? I got about 10 things we could talk about, but I'm sure you have your own agenda of what you want to chat about.
You know, let's start with something, the reality of life right now, and Randy Hedberg's brother passing away of COVID-19. Now, I did the Hedberg story as part of my research, and I did a blog post on it early this morning. Probably why I'm tired. No, just kidding. And when I researched my North Dakota Tough book, the Hedberg family was part of that. And I didn't realize that, Brent, and so you grow up in Partial. It's a prominent family. Randy's still one of the all-time greatest athletes in the state. Rick was a really good athlete. Mm-hmm. And then they have this little brother who had Down syndrome. And the struggles that the family went, I didn't know. And Rick on a Facebook post this morning said that his mother, and I knew this, his mother didn't want to institutionalize him because back in the 60s, sometimes and maybe oftentimes, the way to do things is when you had special needs children is to throw them into an institution.
I had no idea about that.
Yes, and then, but Doris, Randy and Rick's mother, wanted nothing to do with that. And she drove 160 miles round trip just to put him into preschool.
To Underwood, North Dakota.
Yeah,
which is a haul from Partial.
So, and I often wonder, and I asked Randy about this when I wrote about this in my book, and I got the feeling he didn't really want to talk about it much because it's almost maybe too emotional. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But he said, that he was really special to us and really important to us. And I kind of got the sense that he probably just wanted to leave at that. But you wonder, and again, I just wonder that when you are such a great athlete, he's 6'3", he was an NFL draft pick, multiple sport athlete, if there's some sort of sense that, I was so fortunate and then my younger brother had to struggle in life.
I'm sure that weighed on him all the time. I can't even imagine. He posted yesterday, in the last 2 days, I've lost a good friend and my younger brother to COVID. I'm not posting this looking for sympathy. I only want to encourage you to wear a face mask and practice social distancing. He is, I would put him up there as one of the most respected sports figures we have in North Dakota. I think everybody knows him. I always joke with him about that. He knows everybody in every single town. That's just the nature he is. He just gives that off, but he never gives off his emotions. Really, he's a pretty steeled guy. Yep.
And really, that's what you want as a quarterback's coach. When the times get tough in the fourth quarter,
right.
You want that sort of mentality. Whereas Matt Entz will throw a tear here and there or whatever. Randy's opposite. So I got to believe this week has just got to be tearing him up.
There's no doubt about it. And I thought, I'm glad you brought that up to start because I thought that post was great and shows an insight into the Hedberg family that I think a lot of people didn't know or either didn't know until they read your book about that. And to segue off of that about what his protege is going through in the NFL right now. And I know you talked to Randy about the struggles of Carson Wentz and what's gone on over the last, I'd say the last few months. And it obviously came to a head on Monday when Wentz was benched by Doug Peterson for Jalen Hurts. Randy went through his struggles, obviously, in the NFL. So if there's anybody to ask about it, it's Hedberg on this.
Yeah, you arguably had the worst offensive line in NFL history at Tampa in 1977. We talked about that earlier. So Carson, it really comes down to that. That's not his game. His game is not Deshaun Watson. His game is not Lamar Jackson. He's not that real quintessential dual threat. He's a big, strong, 6'5", 235-pound guy who goes back 5 steps, has a rifle arm, and picks his – he needs time.
Yeah, and he has had none of that.
He needs time to go through his progressions.
Is he done quarterbacking in Philly?
I don't know if financially he can be. That's the question.
Well, I guess
I'd like him to be. I think a trade would be awesome.
I think
to the right situation.
Now there are more echoes of that, and who knows if it's just it's just speculation throwing stuff at the wall. That I think that there's now more openness to that. It's granted the Eagles have there's a sizable financial dilemma with that. Indianapolis makes a lot of sense. Obviously, his old offensive coordinator, Frank Reich, is the head coach there. The best success he had in the league was when Reich was his offensive coordinator in Philadelphia.
Phillip Rivers, you got to wonder how much tread he has left on his tire.
I think Indianapolis is in need of a quarterback.
I think a trade would be. I think it would be welcomed by him
if he were to be the quarterback, but there's a different head coach in Philadelphia. What about that scenario?
I don't know. Well, it goes back to the offensive line. Can you protect him?
The crazy thing is Doug Peterson and Jeffrey Lurie flew here. Remember, they were at Mezzaluna on a March night. They are married together. Peterson acknowledged that.
But marriages end up in divorces, too.
That's true. And I guess this one is either cracking or heading in that direction right now.
And I still go back to taking Jalen Hurts at number 2. Why not take an old lineman?
Anything. You know what they could have
receiver.
You know what they could have.
Who could they have?
Jeremy Chin. They could have had him.
They could have had Jeremy Chin.
He's pretty good. He's probably going to be the defensive rookie of the year in the NFL this year. They could have had him.
You obviously didn't show. You weren't hesitant on taking an FCS guy in the 2016 draft. And Jeremy Chin, we saw him. He was a dude, man.
Stud. Was a stud for 3 years at SIU.
He probably, when the Bison played SIU, was a 21-7 game. There were 2 plays he didn't make. Both ended up in touchdowns.
Right. It's as simple as that.
He was a one-man stopping show.
They could have taken anybody, to your point, though, instead of drafting a quarterback. And the argument is, well, Kolpack, they gave him $128 million. He should be mentally strong enough not to say, okay, the Eagles made this kind of investment in me. I'm the guy, not to let that bug me.
Yeah, but when you're back to pass, are you thinking about $30 million when you got NFL linemen putting you on your back?
Literally breathing down on you almost every single play.
And as Randy would say, right in your grill.
Yeah, right. Every single
all the
play.
time.
Tough deal on that. I tweeted this out while I was on the show. The last FCS game that was on the calendar was scheduled for this weekend. Was Incarnate Word, your guys, the University of the Incarnate Word. Against Arkansas State is canceled because Incarnate Word can't play. So I tweeted out, when is the next FCS game we're going to see? Is it going to be February of 2021 or August of 2021? And I'll defer to you.
Well,
what do you say?
I think they're going to do everything they can to go February 21st of 2021, Youngstown, NDSU, Sunday afternoon at Gate City Bank Field at the Fargo Dome. The FBS has gotten through it now. Does the FCS have enough wherewithal and money and all those testing mechanisms? Do they have that back? You don't think so?
The answer is no to that question.
So then why not close up shop now?
I think we're going to hear something after the first of the year. That total speculation on that. But I think that I know there's a vaccine, but that's not going to be in time for what the FCS needs.
Then here's what you do. You take 16 teams that want to play and say, okay, first 16 in, or how many ever want to play. You do a round robin. Say there's 32 teams in the country that want to play. Divide it in half. The top 16 or 12 or whatever. You got to do something. NDSU will have to want to do something.
You know, from your people you've talked to, though, isn't there, at least from what I have, there's at least a sense out there to say, you know what, we're okay not playing. Let's wait. We'll wait till August and go there. I think from some of the top teams in this division, they would say, we're okay with holding off and waiting and playing. And that has nothing to do with the virus. I think it all has to do with playing potentially 20-some-odd games in a 9-month span, which no one has ever done before. No one's ever done that before.
Boy, true. If the FBS is playing, I don't know how, as administrators, you can let your kids down like that.
Yeah, that's a tough deal there. I mean, there's a great balancing act. You're exactly right. And it goes back, and hindsight is what it is, and you said this to me, that they should have at least tried to play in August and September.
I have a college baseball player, and if his season gets shut down this spring, after last year's got shut down after 2 games, how do you look him in the eye?
I don't know.
When other people are playing.
That's true. There are. But the mechanism of testing is the biggest thing. And until the vaccine is readily available, and that's probably not till summertime, I don't know how you do it. And you know the financials better than I do. And they've told you this up at North Dakota State, that if they can't have half the dome filled with people, then
gonna be hard.
they can't do it until they're
Well, they
laying
didn't,
off
they didn't
people,
say they
right?
can't do it, but they stopped short of saying you can't do it. However, things would get
really physically hard.
read
right?
between the lines,
Yeah,
of course.
on how that happens. On the FCS front, and this is obviously this time of year is the coaching carousel. Normally, we be traking down.
So
that.
nobody's going anywhere.
Well,
There is.
There is maybe a couple, including one we know. Weber State's Jay Hill just interviewed for the job at Utah State.
You love Jay Hill, man. You guys are like
You
tight.
like Jay Hill, I thought.
I do too, but you're like you and Bo Baldwin are like texting buddies. You and Jay Hill are like on speed dial too.
He's done a really nice job at that position, don't you think? Out at Weber State,
He's done an incredible job. They were not good when he took over.
Now he made the semifinals last year.
Was his first year when Carson was out there?
That's correct.
That was his first year.
2014 was his first year there.
Before that, they were just a non-factor.
They were not good. I think he's earned a chance there to get a job at the FBS level. If it's Utah State, then it's Utah State, which is obviously in the Mountain West. That would be okay there.
Utah State has no problem hiring mid-major people.
Right.
They hired Craig Smith.
They did do that, and that's worked out
For
pretty
basketball.
good on that front. I don't know if you saw this. I tweeted this out yesterday out of your one of your favorite spots on the Division I tour,
Hold on.
Cedar City, Utah.
I was going to say Davis is number
No,
one. No,
Cedar-
Cal Poly's number one.
Where's Cedar City rank?
Oh, top 5.
I was gonna
just
say.
because of the golfing.
That has nothing to do
Beautiful
with the university.
We've only golfed twice in all my time of covering the FCS football ranks, and we've been to a lot of places, and it's just because of time allowed.
Work gets in the way.
One was in Nacogdoches, Texas, and that was the worst course I've ever played in my life. It was unbelievable. So we Google Earthed it and said, that looks pretty good. The website, you couldn't really tell. We get there, and literally the worst track I've ever been on. The grass was sort of, it was like the fairways were like old Coughlin Alumni Stadium in like October.
Oh, awesome.
And
Great.
the greens were shaggier than shag carpet.
Man.
And the other time was at Cedar City, Utah. The Bison played at night. We got in there early. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Just beautiful, gorgeous. A beautiful course. Plush green, mountains in the background. You're thinking, man, it's going to be packed. There was nobody on there. We zipped through that course. I think it's Trevor, Mike, and who else was? You don't golf.
It
You
was
weren't
not
on
me.
that
It
trip.
was before my time. That sounds like it was a heck of a day.
Oh, it was just gorgeous, and you wonder why. Is it a religious thing that Mormons don't play golf on Saturday? I don't know.
Well, the connection I asked about this is because the Spectrum newspaper out of Cedar City reported on Monday that Southern Utah has received an invitation to the WAC to leave the Big Sky and join the WAC. Now, obviously, at least for my first concern is what do they do with football? And the WAC is interested in bringing back a football league with Southern Utah, Dixie State, who we know is moving up. They're based in Utah. Tarleton State is another one in Texas that they believe they can get enough cobbled together to make this work. The only reason I bring them up is because they have never been a fit anywhere. They weren't a fit in the Summit.
No,
and
you're
now
right.
And now the Big Sky doesn't want them.
You're right. Now, is this a product of the Big Sky not wanting them, or they don't want the Big Sky?
What do you think? I read it as the Big Sky doesn't want them. They've not been good in anything.
That's a footprint. That's a natural footprint. You have Northern Colorado right there.
And they have obviously Weber. That's in state.
Well, that too. I mean, so you got some core schools in the mountain ranges there.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't seem like a fit though for that.
Is
league.
it an academic thing? I know the former Montana president George Dennison, when talk was of NDSU, South Dakota State, maybe Southern Utah coming into the Big Sky. That would have been in 2005, I want to say. That he wanted nothing to do with Southern Utah for academic reasons. That is such a terrible academic school.
Interesting.
Those are his words, not mine.
Now, remember, Utah Valley's out there, too. They don't play football, but they play basketball. So, I mean, geography-wise, it makes a ton of sense if
Utah Valley in the WAC?
If Southern
Utah
Utah
Valley is in the WAC.
If Southern Utah wanted to go and do that. It's interesting that they They can never really find a home. And it'd be interesting to talk to Tom Duble about that because he used to be the president at Southern Utah.
I may run into him somehow this weekend.
You might see him. So
down in Sioux Falls.
If you think of it, will you ask him for me about why Southern Utah, nobody really wants them
don't
anywhere?
you have him in speed dial too?
You're going to see him, which is a perfect segue to what I was going to talk about. But this kind of wave of realignment is going to be now based on geography. It wasn't before.
Isn't that amazing? Back then, like 10, 12, 15 years ago, you're taking everybody.
Everybody. And now that's not fiscally. It can't happen anymore. You know what I mean? It's not fiscally responsible anymore. So now they're going to realign based on crazy thing geography. It makes sense that way. I think that's how it's going to go on that front.
I always thought when they were doing this, take anybody at all costs, was a little absurd. I did.
Well, it's funny because now the Big Sky's two most recent additions are both gone. That'd be UND and Southern Utah are both out of the league. The other ones were affiliate members, the California schools, Davis and
For
Poly.
football only.
And I think that's worked out. Wouldn't you say on the football side of things that both those schools
Absolutely.
have done well on football?
They've given them legitimate football programs. Davis was really good early in the transition, fell off after Bob Biggs left and retired.
I think the expansion, too, in the Big Sky for football hurt because the scheduling was so wacky that you don't play. There's not a set schedule where you play certain teams every single year. It's all over the place. You have no idea who you play.
Yeah, you either have to go to two divisions or restrict your membership.
Right. You
because
chop down teams.
That what do you call it? The circular schedule or rotating schedule. It never really seems to be fair.
No, because some years you'd have Eastern Washington would play Montana, Montana State, and Weber.
And you have teams that don't play those at all.
And then you'd have others, right? You have
like Sacramento, right?
Right. You play Idaho State, you play Idaho, and you play Portland State, and you wouldn't play the top three. I'm like, what? How does that work? And that doesn't make any sense to me.
So
Casper tried to explain it to me, and it was like, I don't
careful
get it.
about Missouri Valley football if you want to add some more schools. 11 that's the absolute maximum.
Without going to divisions.
Yes. If you add 12, you have to go to two divisions.
Yeah. Which I'm okay with.
So you play the same five.
I'm on board on that.
Play the same five every year, then rotate the other three.
Because they're at that point now, Kolpack. Viverito told us that the Bison are going to play USD, SDSU, and UND every single year. Surprisingly, they're not going to play Northern Iowa every single year, which I think makes no sense whatsoever. Put them in there. And then one other, you play those four and put one other school in there, and then rotate the other three out of the other division. Because for some reason they're playing Youngstown, which is the furthest trip in the Missouri Valley. The Bison have played Youngstown every single year.
Well, the Bison football is going to go to my Group of 5 conference anyway that we discussed last week in the pod. What? You laugh.
You like Coastal's performance up to 13. Hey, I'm on board. I said it last week.
Let's
shock the establishment.
I forgot
there.
those teams. Okay, North Dakota State, South Dakota State.
Yeah, you had your whole list there.
I did.
You had a printed out list.
I did.
Like 15 schools.
Wyoming.
You had the Montanas.
Air Force, Montanas.
Northern Iowa, I think you had
Northern
on there.
Iowa was
South
in there.
Dakota State you had on there.
And Northern Illinois.
NIU out of the MAC. They're having a bad year, by the way, in the MAC this year. I don't know if I want them anymore in this new league that
Commissioner
you have.
Izzo. The commissioner speaks.
Let's wrap the pod here with some basketball chatters. You're getting ready to head to Sioux Falls for a unique event that's happening over the next 3 days down at the Pentagon, the Dakota Showcase, where the 4 men's Dakota schools are going to match up against one another starting tonight with UND and South Dakota. The Bison and the Jackrabbits will play the nightcap. NDSU will match up with USD and then UND on Friday and Saturday. This is all obviously in a need of games. I like this. It's a unique season. Why not do it?
Of course. And it's a bus trip. Sioux Falls has been able to handle the Pentagon. They've done a great job with the games and the mini tournaments they've done so far. It's a nice preview for the summit, but for NDSU, it's interesting. My story today I did. They're gonna first 10 games are away from home.
Yep.
They're like the baseball and softball programs.
Yes. Traveling all over the place. The one difference is they're not leaving the central time zone. Obviously, baseball and softball, they go all over the place. But, this is...
Goddamn, they've had to bus.
Well, yeah, they bust to Nebraska a couple times. Obviously, bust to Kansas last week. And now they'll have to... Are they busing to Texas? Is it when they go to TCU after this? That's under my impression.
I don't know.
I believe.
Really?
I think
they're taking the sleeper bus
again?
again?
They may be doing that. I'll have to double check on.
I did that
front.
when I played baseball. We have 30 seconds.
for it.
It's
a pod.
We'd leave here at like 8 at night and take this people mover. It's a 24-hour trip. By the time you get there, even when you're 19, 20, 21, you're just like shot. It takes like 3 days to recover. So
stiff.
So if you're a betting person, if they're busting to Texas to TCU,
that's a long way
long
to
haul.
go. What do we make of the Bison men? We'll get to the women here in a second. What do you think so far? They nearly beat Kansas last Saturday.
They show promise. One thing we've found out about this pandemic and no fans is the lack of these amazing home court advantages that the majors enjoy. Look at Fort Hays State. Division II, 0-3, last in the MIAA. They go to K-State and kill them.
Yeah, they won by double digits.
Because there's no crowd to really rescue the home team when things aren't going well.
Kansas had the same exact with the Bison game. I thought the same thing. You're exactly
right. If you're ever
going
to sneak up on a team, now's to do it when there's not fans there. It's like going to the YMCA and you never know.
I thought the kid from Devil's Lake, Grant Nelson, I'll have a story on him on
the Bison
Sunday
are
night.
emerging.
He looked good.
Yeah.
He held his own against Kansas on Saturday.
I thought McKinney, the point guard, came on a little bit. And, they're just – it's the MO, right? So Dave takes a team, builds it. Last 2-3 years of a core group, you give the Summit a run, then you sort of start over.
And that's kind of where they're at right now. South Dakota State looks like, and you mentioned this before even the season got going, on paper they look like it, and boy, Kolpack, they've played it so far.
Really, really curious to see the game tonight, how the Bison stack up to an experienced team like that.
Yeah. Shireman's been really good. He's the kid who wasn't really counting on anything. And he's been good.
The Jacks get these guys out of Nebraska, small town. Mike Dom, then this guy comes.
Yeah. Friedel we knew was going to be good, and we knew Wilson is a stud down low, and he was obviously the player of the year last year.
How he got away from other people.
Yeah, that's still one of those head scratchers of how they happen in recruiting. UND, South Dakota, and the Bison, none of them won a game yet. SDSU is the only one that's won so far. I am curious to see Paul Sather's team play after the run they had at the end of last season. Obviously, he's starting from scratch as well with basically a new team up in Grand Forks.
Yeah, I really don't know much about him either. I've just seen highlights.
They played the Gophers.
I know nothing about the Coyotes either.
Todd Lee's got all we know is Amude, who's back, then Don Plitzowite's son, AJ Plitzowite, who's playing pretty well so far.
Todd Lee has the best hair of any coach in the league. Dave's got to step it up, man.
Wow,
he's got
smackdown already.
Dave's got that, and I'm an expert on hair.
You are an expert on hair.
Dave's kind of got the flat side nerdy part going. He's got to go to a makeover.
You let him know that when you see him tonight.
I will.
Down at Sioux Falls. I mentioned this at the end of my show on Thursday that the bandwagon is filling up for the North Dakota State women's basketball team after a weekend sweep of Green Bay. Now ranked 16th in the mid-major poll. First time that's ever happened. They've been ranked. They get set to play Iowa State on Saturday. You've been at all three games. Give me your impression so far.
This is more what we thought about in 2007, 2008 on what this team probably was going to look like. It's just taken 12 years. That's about it.
Coaching and recruiting.
Coaching, recruiting, athletes, inside, outside. It's just, they finally got some quickness out front.
They do have athletes, and they have, I think,
and I said
toughness too.
Look out for Abby Schulte. She's going to be this team's best player within a year or two.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. All right. Girl from Maple Grove. She was a really good player.
She's got some ability. She's got the mentality, and she just needs to be a little more aggressive. Well, she's a true freshman.
Yep.
But look out.
All right. Kolpack's calling it there. I just we talked about this. There's depth on this roster, which they'd never had before, and different people that can score the ball. The last couple of years, they've had basically one or maybe two. That's not the case right now. They have
the
three or four.
last game the bench was better than the starters.
Yeah. When has that ever been the case in the last decade?
Well, they had like 8 players sometimes.
Or 7.
7.
Right. It's been sometimes really, really short.
We're not kidding either.
No. Sometimes you and I would go, especially at the old BSA, when
there would be like 7 players
Carolyn
eligible.
Diehoff's last few years, I would look and say, Kolpack, they have 7 players dressed, and they're playing South Dakota State. And that was, at least to my next point, where the Jacks and the Coyotes could pick the score of how much they wanted to beat the Bison by. And I'm curious when we get to that point, when they actually play, how close, and now playing back-to-back
How
nights,
much the gap is closed.
right, to see where NDSU is at with those two. Because, by the way, they're still really good. The Jacks and the Coyotes are really good again.
Summit's 2-bid league.
Oh, man, that's
It has
fantastic
to be.
if that's the
It
case.
has to be.
It happened a couple
right
years
now,
ago.
after an early going, the way they've competed nationally, it has to be.
I think it was going to be again this past year, too.
South Dakota State's beat ranked teams. South Dakota almost did. Should have beat the number, not should have, but came.
They played with South Carolina. There's no doubt about it. That they're
now
they're
the Bison play Iowa State Saturday. That'll be an interesting benchmark too.
The Jacks beat Iowa State. That game was obviously in Brookings. This game that NDSU's playing is down in Ames. A payback game because Iowa State came up here last year. The thing is, Jeff, and you take what you want on social media, and we should wrap this here pretty quick. That at least there's a tension on this team. It's been total apathy for a decade, and now. Look what 3 wins have done to bring people out of the woodwork here. It's amazing to me.
Yep, and we see it in our analytics and in the online forum that more people are just reading Bison women's basketball. Simple as that.
Hey, before we go,
you said before we go like 7 times.
Sorry. Did you happen to watch a bit of the BYU Coastal game?
I did.
Last week?
I watched most of it.
What did you make of Zach Wilson, the BYU QB? Who right
is he
now
better than Trey Lance?
Yes, that's my question.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's as athletic and he's not as big.
He didn't impress me.
No.
I was not wowed. Now, granted, he's built his stats on some terrible competition. That was the first really solid team that BYU has played, and they ended up losing. He's the guy right now that's being favored ahead of Trey as the number 3 quarterback.
Missouri Valley's had some good D-backs. Look at UNI has a couple in the league. You got Jeremy Chin. NDSU's had D-backs in the league. And so you cannot discount the FCS thing. There's been some good D-backs at FCS.
No doubt
Central
about
Arkansas,
it.
Robert Rochelle.
Yeah,
he's gonna
be
get drafted
as well. You upset the Big Ten changed its rules for Ohio State?
I think it's no, it's COVID. Yeah,
they're making it. You know what? It's this year. They made it up as they went along anyway.
You're scheduling games BYU like 3 days in advance.
Play Coastal.
So you take another game out the requirement.
I'm a little peeved that Indiana didn't get a chance, but they lost the head-to-head with Ohio State, so I can't really complain too much. If they had beaten Ohio State, then we're in a different ball game then on that front, I think, than they're in the Big Ten championship.
Indiana's going to get a good bowl game, though, if there is bowl games.
Right, that's a whole other deal, if we can even get to that point right now.
Summit, Fiesta's going to be no fans.
Rose Bowl, no fans for that. That's a semifinal game as well. And then I saw that 16,000 are going to be allowed at the SEC championship game down in Georgia, in Atlanta. Right? It's different parts of the country. They're going to allow different parts in. Safe travels, my man.
Thank you. Hopefully I get through Summit, yes.
Yes, I know it. You're going to do that trip without me to Summit, South Dakota today.
I'll give you a report when I get to Watertown.
Live tweets from the road from Kolpack. And Jeff will be down in Sioux Falls to document the 3 days down there. Should be some good basketball with the Bison take on South Dakota State on Thursday, USD on Friday, and then UND on Saturday. Of course, you can find all past episodes at inforum.com and on Apple iTunes. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.